Hi everyone, this is Heather Box from the Million Person Project. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Stories Are Power interview series. And I am really excited to be here tonight with Julian Mocine-McQueen, who is the co-founder of the Million Person Project and who also is my partner in life. He's been my boyfriend for 11 years. And so I have saved all of the hardest questions for him. And I'm just really excited to welcome you here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And I'd love for you to just say hello and introduce yourself to the audience.
All right. Hello, audience. My name is Julian Mocine-McQueen. I am the co-founder of the Million Person Project, a global project about love, storytelling, and connecting changemakers. And I'm thrilled to be here.
So I have watched you all over the world on countless stages, some of them, with audiences over 1,000 people and jumbotrons. I have watched you share your personal story in incredibly powerful ways. Mm-hmm. And my question for you is, how do you stay in touch with your story after all of these years of sharing it over and over again?
I stay in touch with it because it's like I revisit it in my head a lot, and I check in with myself, and I try to ensure that it still feels right and that it still feels real. I'm really fortunate because it's tied. My personal story is, what I share has a lot to do with the work that I do, both with the Million Person Project and at my other job at Green for All, and so that feels really personal. And so when I'm sharing it, it's really important for me to check in with the story often and sort of reconnect with why I do the work. So it really gives me that opportunity to really think about why I do what I do. And I check it against the story that I tell and the story that I understand for myself and make sure that it resonates and that it feels real. And then when I share it, I always feel very much in touch with it. I think another part of that is that I always am really conscious of the opportunity that I have with whoever I'm talking to and how important it is to use my time and their time well, and that if I'm going to stand up there, I need to really believe in what I'm saying, or else I'm wasting everybody's time. And I take that really, really seriously, and so that really helps me to just sort of be like, who am I talking to and why? And what do I want them to leave with, and what's the opportunity that we have together today? If I'm really up here and speaking my truth and telling a story that's really moving people, what is the opportunity we have? And I try to get in touch with that, and that helps.
So one of the other things that happens when you share your story and when you share such deep, emotionally resonant content with your audience is that people often come up to me afterwards and they say, isn't it incredible to be in a relationship with someone who expresses himself so deeply emotionally? And I have to acknowledge their experience and say, yeah, he is a very powerful emotional communicator. But I also have to honor my own experience and say that isn't always my experience, that I don't always feel like I'm in a relationship with someone who emotionally expresses himself. And so my question is about, is it easier for you to emote and express yourself in that way publicly than it is in your intimate and personal relationships, and why?
Yes, it is. You really put me on blast. It is. Is it easier? It is easier, and I don't know why. I think part of it is because I have spent a lot of time thinking about my emotional connection to my work, and I've challenged myself to be able to share that a lot. And I think part of it is that it's easier to compartmentalize that and say, today I have a job to do, and it's an important job, and I have this opportunity to talk to these young people in Arizona about what they can do in their community, and I need to do that right now. And so it's sort of game on. At home, between you and me, I feel like I wrestle with a lot of things for myself, but then I stop myself short of saying anything because I feel like, oh, I don't quite get it, or I don't know how I feel, you know? And so I stay more in a place of confusion around that, and I allow that to let me not share as much. I don't offer it unprompted. Like I have a reason to do it at work, and it's prompted in that way. And it's at home, of course I have huge reasons to do it. But it feels like I have a hard time sort of drawing myself out and taking the first step there. And yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, and so what is your advice to someone who really is struggling to be vulnerable? Like they hear people saying, oh, your authentic truth is your power and your vulnerability is your power. And when they hear that, they're like, BS. Like, I feel so weak when I express my vulnerabilities. Or when I'm unsure about something in my relationship or in my life, in my work, whatever it is, it feels like I'm jumping off a cliff to just be like, this is how I feel, unprompted. So what is your advice to someone who is struggling to be vulnerable?
I would say every time or almost every time I feel very rewarded and feel very much like, you know, more of myself, and I feel more real. I feel like I've honored myself in our relationship. I feel like I've honored the people that I'm with more when I sort of like take the scary step to say something. So when I can remember that, sometimes it takes like chanting that mantra in my brain to be like, okay, 30 seconds, I'm gonna say something. Like really, it's true. Like it'll be like, I'm gonna share this thing that I've been sitting on for 3 days in 10, 9, you know, like it gets to that point sometimes when I think about the last time I was able to do it and the fact that it just got realer and our relationship got realer, or the meeting that I was in got realer and more connected, and I could feel that it makes it worth it. And I think for the most part, you know, I think we're fearful of what people are going to respond and how they're going to respond. And of course, it depends on what you're sharing and to whom. But I think for the most part, people are more compassionate than we give them credit for. And I always ask people to think about what you're going to share. And if somebody shared it with you, what would your response be to them? It would probably not be run out of the room screaming. It probably wouldn't be punch them in the mouth. It would probably be listen and like sit with it. It would probably be give them a hug. It would probably just be there. You know, for a lot of what we're afraid to share, if somebody shared it with us, we'd want to be there for them and not run away. And so I think trying to remember that is important.
I think that is so important, that idea that putting yourself in the listener's shoes and saying, how would I meet that person?
Right. We forget how much compassion we have, you know, and our ability for compassion. You know, you see it en masse and you see things in the news and this and that, and it sort of feels like it's all shit. But you get people in a room together and it's totally different.
Yeah.
And people are, by and large, I think, good to each other.
When you tell your story, you tell, you know, one sort of strand through your story or a couple of different strands through your story. Mm-hmm. Are there parts of your story that you're not sharing intentionally because you're not comfortable or you're not ready to go public with it?
Interesting question. Interesting platform in which to ask that question, I would say. So are there parts of my story that I don't share?
And that and why don't you share?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great question. Yeah, and I think the reason, there's some parts that I think are important parts to my story. Like an example that I don't talk about a lot is going from Oakland to Humboldt County and what that meant for me as a young black kid and this one of the few black kids in my town. And there's parts of that story that I do share. But also what I don't talk about a lot is the sort of struggle with identity around that and like what that meant for me growing up, and and I think that's an important part of who I am. How it connects to my work, it definitely connects, right? I feel like I maybe haven't done the work to really deeply understand that. So I think one of the reasons I don't share it is not feeling like I have as clear of an understanding as I'd like as to why I'm sharing it. Mm-hmm. And then other things, it's like some of that stuff, not necessarily that, but that is like, some of that's unresolved, and you know what I mean? And so that makes it harder to share. Like I think part of my story, it feels like there's a resolution to it. The parts that I share, there's a resolution. There's other parts that I don't share that maybe feel less resolved. So it's like, So it's even that much more scary to share.
And when you hear other people share unresolved parts of their story, how does it feel to you?
Well, I feel proud of them. I feel a lot of respect. I mean, I can tell, when you listen to somebody who's putting something out there that they're actively kind of working on and working with and trying to decipher, it's really powerful and inspiring. And as somebody who's, worked to be able to share my story and doing it in an authentic way, in a real way, feel in touch with the emotion and stuff, I know how hard that is. And so when you see somebody really in the thick of it and working through things that are unresolved and that they haven't necessarily sort of come to terms in, and they can kind of, like, for me, it's like my story, I've gone through it and I know it and I feel it, but I can sit with it and I can get in touch with it, but I can also take lots of distance from it. And it can be a story that I can tell very academically. And and when you see people that aren't at that point where they're actually just, they're thinking things as they're sharing it and learning as they speak, I feel proud of people, and I feel impressed.
And do you want to be that person?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do. It's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, sharing the unresolved parts of our stories, sharing the part that we're still in process with, is really key to our own liberation. Like, for me, it's not about it being cathartic. It's actually key to us standing in our full power to say, this is the truth. Like, maybe I don't have the right context to ever talk about this experience, but I want to be seen as my whole self. And that is my intention for sharing this part of my experience. And so that's something that I say to my clients, and that's something that I encourage you too, is to share the parts of you, even if you don't always have the context or the connection, and to trust that your audience is there with you and that they will get value out of seeing you for you and as you.
Well, I think that's true. I know that's true, and I've seen it, and I've seen you do it. I've seen our clients do it, so I definitely know it's true.
Yeah. And one of the other things that I've seen is that, you're a leader among men. Like, I have seen that. Like, a lot of men really look up to you, and I have seen the way that you are with your friends, and that you are with our clients, and I've seen you be able to really encourage people to take that next step in their leadership and their authenticity and their vulnerability. And my question to you is that if you really thought about that and you really stood in that power and you acknowledged, wait a second, I have the ability right now to really stand as a role model or as an example, what parts of your story would you share with them? Like, what silence would you break in your own life?
Well, let's see. I want to try to answer this question.
Yeah, I think there's something there.
Oh, you do? Oh, you do? Okay, so I think most of the dumb shit we do, and most of the times where we sort of are not being our best selves as guys, comes back to fear. And I think we like to, and being sort of scared, insecure and scared. And I think we like to dress it up as a lot of other things. And for me, it's been like being scared to be who I am, and being scared to just know that that's enough. And so when I've acted out of character, it's been coming from that place of like, trying to prove to myself that I'm somebody that I'm not, or trying to prove to others around me that I'm like, it's like people kind of know who you are, and they think you're somebody, and you try to play to that as opposed to just being who you are, because people know who you are, So I think if I was talking to guys, it would be about that. Like the times I've gotten in trouble and when I've really had to sit and be like, that is not the person I want to be, and I have to sit with that, and I have to think about that forever, and there are those moments. It's been when I haven't been, that I've used, I've stepped out of character trying to hide from, either myself or just trying trying to be what I thought others wanted me to be. So I think that drives a lot of the death and destruction in the world, and a lot of the things that guys do that hurt themselves and others comes from that place. And so I think the more stories that we could hear of people confronting that and being willing to share those moments and how they were able to come back around and touch that, and touch what's real for them, and stand up and be like, I screwed up and whatever, and I'm going to try to be more myself now. I think the world could use a lot of that, and I think guys could use a lot of that, and I don't think we hear that enough.
Yeah, and I do think that you are a powerful person to speak on that.
Thank you. Is that another request? Are you wanting juicy details, or what are you looking for here?
I mean, I'm always looking for juicy details.
Yeah, you are always looking for juicy details.
For me, every time you share part of your story, and every time you speak up as a leader, it comes so naturally to you, the speaking up as a leader. Sometimes I feel like you aren't always in touch with how much of an impact that you're having on the people that are listening to you. And I think that that's a common thing for a lot of leaders out there. When we are able to just express who we are, to express our mistakes, to express remorse, regret, that some of that stuff just heals. That shining a light on it actually heals it. And, one of the stories that I love that I know of you, of your life, is the story about you having your true nature reflected back to you from your dear friend. And so I would love for you to share with the audience that story.
Yeah, okay. That's a good one. So the year was 1993 probably. I think I was in 7th grade, and it was kind of a crazy time in my childhood. A weird thing took place in the town. So I grew up in a little tiny town called Ferndale. It's one of the greatest towns in America. In the early 90s, a weird thing took place with some of the kids there, where there's this one kind of alpha male kid that country music was really popular, right? It's a small, mostly white town, and country music was popular. And so there was always this kind of rivalry between me and my friends we were more into rap and hip hop and other things. And then there was sort of the country kids, and we're all friends for the most part. But this one year it got weird, and this one alpha male kid kind of flipped a lot of people to take the country thing and turn it into sort of like Stars and Bars racist, just straight racist. Like a bunch of kids just got really bigoted with it, and it became this sort of big thing. And so it was a lot of back and, we got in fist fights and this and that. And it was mostly, it's little kid stuff, but it was really real at the time, and it felt so serious, And I was really trying to understand, who I was in that, and also not wanting to take any mess, and sort of, was raised to not, you just don't let that fly, or you're just going to keep getting it. And so there was some of that, but I also was trying on this idea of being tough. And it's funny because I got into probably 5 or 6 or 7 fights before 8th grade, and I never got in a fight after 8th grade. And so one of the reasons behind that is because I was in that mode of trying to be a tough guy or whatever, not really successfully. I was never a bully, but I was trying it on, and I felt like it was real. And I went over to my friend Turner's house, one of my best friends in the world. He's wonderful. And his mom, Laura, who's also wonderful, who recently just passed away, but just a shining light of a person. And it was all of us there, me, Turner, my friend Dustin, this kid Rodney, my buddy Rodney, and we were hanging out, Brett Boynton, and we were all hanging out, and I don't know what we were doing, but we were all in the kitchen. And Laura says to me, she just picks me out. She's like, Julian, I love you because you're just a peacemaker, and you just want to bring people together, and you just see the good in people and you want to bring it out of them, And Turner starts going, you're right, and starts talking about how I'm trying to be this heavy, at school. And I remember hitting him shut up, Turner. Your mom thinks I'm cool and she thinks I'm a peacemaker, And I mean, hand to God, like from that day forward, it was funny because, again, like I said earlier, if people see you for who you are, and I was trying to see myself for somebody else, you know, and having her reflect that back to me, it's like my parents, everybody saw that, you know, and it was even reflected to me, but to have it drawn out just in such stark relief to what I was trying to be really never left me. And it was from that day forward that I actually embraced that as who I was, you know, and it was, you know, and it really was. It was like like I said, I'd never gotten a fight after 8th grade. That was like 7th or 8th grade, and I never got in a fight again. And it was like, because I decided I was a peacemaker, because I was told I was a peacemaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that story for so many different reasons. What that story reminds me of is about standing in our power. What gives you the courage to stand in your power? Like, why do you believe that you can have an impact on the world?
Like on the macro level, I think that as fucked up as the world is, largely the world is less fucked up than it was. And through history, we've gotten better at being less terrible. and I really, you know, I just believe that trend will continue. And we're fighting some crazy stuff, like climate change is super scary. There's all kinds of scary stuff. And so at times it feels like it's a race against time. But I think our instincts are to be better and to be more humane. And I really believe that. And I think there's a lot of evidence to point to that through history and now. I really stand in that. And then, you know, personally, I just feel, you know, like I said, when I talk, I really try to get in touch with why I'm there and what it is. And I feel deeply, like my heart starts to beat fast and I feel emotionally connected to what I'm saying, not just my story, but what I believe is possible. And I know how that makes me feel. And so I try to put others in that place. Like, what if other people felt as inspired as I feel by just thinking about these solutions that I think are really real? And what can I do to help people to feel that? And that makes me feel really powerful. And it makes me feel like, and I know because I've been in front of crowds for a long time, and I started like performing in different ways and speaking in front of people at a young age. And I've felt the way that audiences respond when you connect. And I felt it over and over again. And I know I've been on both ends of it. And I know that I have a gift to do that. And so that makes me feel powerful. I just know from talking to people and our clients and from, you know, just the fact that a lot of people are not comfortable with it. And a lot of people don't really know how to connect, you know, and I do. And I think it's a sacred charge to be as grandiose as possible about it.
Yeah, and I think that all of us have that inside of us, whether it's we're a writer or we're able to pull teams together or we're great with numbers or we have a real gift around, you know, video and art. And I think it is a real honor to watch someone honor and acknowledge that they do have a gift. And that we should all be doing that. That's our charge as humans, is to live in our gift and to share it with ourselves and each other. And so I like to hear you just explicitly say that. So
right on. Yeah, you got me in a corner about it.
For our viewers, what would your advice be for them in terms of how can they take the first step to telling their story and to expressing their truth?
My advice would be to do it even if you're only doing it to yourself, even if you're only doing it with yourself. I know that for myself, like a lot of things, you've experienced this with me, like we'll have something we're working through or whatever, and it's through talking that I actually have the breakthrough and recognize how I feel about something or what I actually think. That's been really important for me. So I think I would recommend just getting it out, whether it's on paper or even if you're just talking out loud or into, you know, something into your phone or something like that. I think that's a really important first step, at least for me, is just getting it out there. I think that's good. And then I think we all have a myriad of stories that we can share, and some of them are deeper than others and some of them more painful than others, but you have to start somewhere. And so I think lining up the various threads you see and the narratives you see and picking not the easiest one, but the second easiest, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is. Push yourself even just a step further. Pick that one story that you're like, oh, can I tell this? Maybe I can. And practice with that one and get it out in the world and tell somebody who you're friends with or at a dinner party, tell a story, whatever it might be. And just go a little bit, challenge yourself to tell a little bit more than you kind of feel ready to do. And I think it starts there.
Yeah, and I really agree with you that, one of the things that I say a lot in our work is that the truth sits right underneath the truth. Mm-hmm. Like, whatever you think is the truth about what you're saying, whatever feels like really authentic and like you can't find the deeper truth until you share that truth and you get comfortable with that truth. And then sometimes it opens up for you and you say, oh, actually there's a deeper level to this story that I wasn't really even aware of, or I wasn't negotiating telling it, wasn't on my radar. And so I like that idea of pushing yourself to express the truth and seeing what opens for you in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a huge thing for me over the years to recognize that as part of my process. Mm-hmm. I don't get to what's real unless I start playing around with it. And a lot of times it's saying it out loud. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, have the breakthrough in the sentence. Oh, wait, that is how I feel. Holy shit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining this conversation, and thank you for
welcome.
Being you.
Thank you for being you.
And thank you to all of the viewers for tuning in to this interview series and to this conversation. It has been such an honor and a joy for me to be the host of the series. And this is just the beginning. There'll be more interviews coming out throughout the year. But I thank you guys for signing on for these last 20-something days. And I hope that you enjoyed it. I would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you, to hear what did you think of the series? What did you think of this interview? We would also love to work with you. If you want to get story coaching and work on your own personal story, or if you want to bring us into your organization or your business to work with your team, we do personal storytelling workshops. And we would love for you to reach out and to learn more about our work. And we would love for you all to go out into the world and to be all of who you are and to allow yourself to be known. We believe that it is one of the greatest gifts that you can give as a person and as a leader. So thank you.
Thank you.